Hello. Today we're telling the incredible story of Gideon and his tiny army. This is a story from the Bible about trusting God, even when things seem impossible. So stick around as we discover how God can do amazing things through us, even when we feel small and weak. Our story begins with a man named Gideon. Gideon loved God, but he and his people faced a huge problem. A powerful enemy army called the Midianites was attacking Israel constantly. The Midianites were strong, they were numerous, and they were making life absolutely miserable for God's people. The people of Israel were suffering. They didn't know what to do. They needed a leader. They needed a hero. And that's when God spoke to Gideon. God said, "Gideon, I want you to be the one. I'm calling you to lead an army and save Israel from the Midianites." Now, Gideon began gathering soldiers. Word spread throughout the land, and men came from all over to join Gideon's army. Pretty soon, he had assembled a massive force, 32,000 soldiers. That's a lot of men. Gideon must have looked at his enormous army and thought, wow, we've absolutely got this. We're going to crush the enemy for sure. But then something unexpected happened. God told Gideon something that made him do a double take. God said, "Gideon, you have too many people. If you win this battle with 32,000 men, your soldiers will take all the credit. They'll think they won because they were strong and powerful. They won't trust that I did it. They won't give me the glory. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to make your army much smaller." Gideon obeyed. God told him to announce to all the soldiers, "Anyone who is afraid can go home right now. No shame, no judgment, just go." And what happened? 22,000 men said goodbye and left. That's 2/3 of his army, just like that. Gideon went from 32,000 soldiers down to 10,000. That's still a decent-sized army, right? But God said, nope. Still too many. God gave Gideon another test. He said, "Take your 10,000 men down to the river. I want them to get a drink of water." So Gideon led them to the riverbank. Now here's where it gets interesting. Most of the soldiers were so thirsty that they knelt down and put their faces right into the water. Slurp, slurp, slurp. They weren't paying attention to anything except getting that drink. But 300 men were different. These 300 men were alert and careful. Instead of kneeling down and burying their faces in the water, they scooped the water up in their hands and brought it to their mouths. They stayed in a position where they could watch for danger. They kept their eyes open and their guard up, even while they drank. God looked at this and said, "Perfect. These 300 I'll use. These are the men who stay alert and ready. These are the ones who trust me." So Gideon's army went from 32,000 down to just 300 soldiers. That's less than 1% of what he started with. You might think Gideon would be panicking at this point. 300 men against an enormous enemy army? That seemed impossible. But Gideon trusted God's plan, even though it didn't make sense. That night, God gave Gideon an unusual battle strategy. Instead of giving his 300 men swords and spears and shields, God told Gideon to give them something completely different. Each man received a clay jar, a torch, and a trumpet. That's it. No weapons. Just jars, torches, and trumpets. This was definitely not a normal way to go to war. Gideon gathered his 300 men and explained the plan. They crept quietly down to the enemy camp in the darkness. Gideon whispered to them, "Watch me carefully. Do exactly what I do. When I give the signal, you'll understand what to do." Then came the moment. Gideon gave the signal. Suddenly, all 300 men smashed their clay jars crash. The sound echoed through the night. Then they blew their trumpets toot, toot, toot. The noise was incredible, and they all shouted together, "A sword for the Lord and for Gideon." What happened next was amazing. The Midianite soldiers woke up startled and confused. Everywhere they looked, they saw torches. They heard trumpets blaring. They heard men shouting. In the darkness, they couldn't tell how many enemies surrounded them. They panicked. They got confused. They started fighting each other. And then they all ran away in terror. Gideon and his tiny army of 300 men won the entire battle. Without firing a single arrow or swinging a single sword. They didn't need weapons. They just needed to trust God. So what does this story teach us? This incredible account shows us that when we trust God, He can accomplish amazing things through us even when we feel small, weak, and outnumbered. Gideon didn't win because he had the biggest army. He won because he trusted God completely, even when God's plan seemed crazy. God often works through weakness, not strength. God often uses the impossible to show us His power. When we put our trust in Him instead of in our own abilities, that's when we see real miracles. So remember Gideon's story. When you face something that seems too big or too hard, remember that God is bigger and stronger than any obstacle. Trust Him. Follow His plan, even if it doesn't make sense. And watch what He can do. Thank you for joining me today. Did you love this story? Make sure to subscribe for more amazing Bible stories.